Everyone, and welcome to the April 7th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 1:02. Jillian, can you do a roll call, please?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and start the roll call. Chair Escobedo.
Here.
Vice Chair Bonderson.
Here.
Commissioner Bach.
Here.
Commissioner Higgins.
Sorry.
Here.
Commissioner Lodge.
Here.
Commissioner Wardlow.
Here.
And Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. Ms. DeBus, do we have any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of X agenda items?
Thank you, Chair Escobedo. We have none.
How about any announcements or appeals?
No announcements, no appeals.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 2C, which is review, consideration, and action on the draft Planning Commission meeting minutes and resolutions for March 17th, 2022. Are there any changes to the meeting minutes from the commission? And if not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Wiscombe and a second from Commissioner Bauke. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Ms. Fennessy, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. I'll start the roll call vote. Vice Chair Bonderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bauke.
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins.
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge.
Yes.
Commissioner Wardlow.
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe.
Yes.
And Chair Escobedo.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. And we do not have any public commenters here today to comment on items that are not on today's agenda, so we'll close out preliminary matters. And we'll move on to item 3, which is a continued item from March 17th, 2022. This is 418th North Salsapuedes Street. It's a proposal to convert a portion of the existing building from an industrial kitchen to a commercial kitchen. It's a discretionary application required for this project is a performance standard permit to allow accessory uses to exceed the 10% allowed in the M1 zone. And I believe we have Ms. Broadison here from staff to give the staff presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair Escobedo and Commissioners. As you stated, the project is for a performance standard permit to increase the allowed amount of accessory space within a warehouse building. The project was denied by the staff hearing officer, and on appeal, the Planning Commission reviewed the proposed PSP, performance standard permit, and was supportable of the application and made a motion to approve the project. However, we did continue the approval of the project for 2 weeks so that staff could craft some very accurate and detailed findings, which are before you today. So with that, I will let you go ahead and debate.
And is there a staff or applicant presentation today, Ms. Broadison?
No, there's no applicant presentation today.
Thank you. So we'll take it to the commission and Commissioner Wiscombe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to just show my appreciation to staff. The motion that we made and then withdrew last week so we could get some real findings, it was really well done. And I appreciate it. And the withdrawn motion last week included some conditions, and I've noted that they've all been addressed very nicely in the conditions of approval. So I'm very happy with it, and I want to thank staff for all your work on it. And I'd be, when the time's ready, I'd be happy to make a motion to make the findings and approve the conditions of approval.
Chair Escobedo,
Yes, Ms. Ostringer?
this item was continued, but because there was some new information that's put before the public in the staff report, could we open public comment?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Ostringer. Is there anyone from the public that would like to give public comment today on this item? And we don't have any speaker slips, and I'm not seeing anyone for public comment, so we could close public comment on this item. Thank you. Commissioner Higgins?
I'm ready to second what sounded like a motion from Commissioner Wiscombe.
Commissioner Wiscombe, did you make a formal motion?
No, Mr. Chair, but I'd be happy to if my fellow commissioners are ready for that. I will move the findings on page 2 of 10 in the staff report and move the draft planning commission's conditions of approval. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion on the table from Commissioner Wiscombe and a second from Commissioner Higgins. I want to check in with Commissioner Bonderson to see if she has any comments. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Any other discussion from the commission? I'm not seeing any. Ms. Fennessy, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. I'll go ahead and start the roll call vote. Commissioner Bauke,
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins,
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Wardlow,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bonderson,
Yes.
and Chair Escobedo.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. And Ms. DeBusk, is there an appeal period for this item?
Yes, Commissioner Escobedo. Can you announce the 10-day?
Do I have the language that I could refer to? I apologize.
I'm sorry, I do not, but it's a 10-day appeal period.
We have a 10-day appeal period for this item. So with that, we'll close out this item, and we'll move on to our next item, which is item 4. It is 1384 Shoreline Drive, a proposal to demolish the existing single-unit residence and all on-site structures and construct a new 2,043-square-foot single-unit residence with a partial second story, a 422-square-foot attached garage, a new in-ground pool, a detached 34-square-foot pool amenity structure, and associated hardscape and landscape improvements. The 6,191 square foot property is located in both the appealable and non-appealable jurisdictions of the coastal zone, but the majority of the site is appealable. Ms. Plummer, for the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Escobedo. So this afternoon, we'll be discussing the project at 1384 Shoreline Drive. Okay, so to the left, you'll see an aerial view of the project site highlighted in yellow. You'll also see the first public road identified with a red line, and across the street from the project site is Shoreline Park. To the right is an image of the existing single-family residence. The project before you includes demolition of the existing single-unit residence, including all on-site structures, and construction of a new single-unit residence with a partial second story, a new pool at the backyard and pool amenity structure, as well as overall site hardscape and landscape improvements. This is just a photo of the existing residence as viewed from Shoreline Drive. This is a view of the backyard. The citrus trees will be removed as part of the project, including the shed next to those trees. This is another shot from the backyard of the existing residence, looking back towards Shoreline and Shoreline Park. And this is an aerial view of the existing, or the proposed residence. So you'll see the driveway relocation on the right, and the new location for the garage, the pool at the backyard, and a partial second story, really just to accommodate a landing and storage area, as well as a roof deck that faces out towards the ocean. The project is consistent with the zoning ordinance, and that was included in the staff report. I do want to make one clarification about the height. So in the staff report, we did note that the building height was 14 feet 6 inches to 19 feet. However, that was for above finished floor. So the actual height is 16 feet 6 inches to 21 feet. That's still well within the height allowance in the ordinance. The project was reviewed by the Single Family Design Board on 2 occasions. The first hearing was in January 18th, where the board expressed general support for the design of the building. However, they did request the applicant team to study lowering the plate heights, study the garage design and its relationship to the rest of the front elevation, and then to provide information based on public comment that was received from 2 neighbors about existing walls and fencing and how that would relate to new proposed fencing on the site. By February 14th, the applicant had addressed the board's comments, and the board found the project compatible with the neighborhood and aesthetically appropriate. They did not require any additional comments to return for when the project would go for project design approval following this hearing. Staff did review the project for consistency with the Coastal Act and Coastal Land Use Plan. The site is located in the Mesa component, and the primary issues for this component area include infill development, potentially blocking public scenic views, and beach and coastal bluff erosion. The site is located within an existing single-unit or single-family neighborhood comprised of 1- and 2-story buildings, so it's consistent with that general building typology. The project does include the required amount of parking for the property with a covered two-car garage, and the project also must comply with Tier 3 stormwater requirements. In this particular case, this project includes a infiltration chamber as one of the elements, and that will be required to be officially approved by the Creeks Division before final approval on the project. The project also is subject to a variety of policies relevant to visual resources. This can include design review, specific visual evaluation requirements, protection of scenic resources and public scenic views. To the right, you'll see an image, and this was included in the staff report, the project site approximately identified with a red arrow, and it is in a site that's a visual cone with neutral yellow to positive green background views. And again, just as a reminder, it's across the street from Shoreline Park, which is identified as a scenic resource. The applicant team prepared a street silhouette to show how the project fits within the existing neighborhood. So the context of various houses within that street of Shoreline, and as well as a actual simulation of the building. On the next slide, you'll see that. This information was presented to the Single Family Design Board as part of the 2 design hearings and received favorable comments from the Single Family Design Board. And just as a reminder for this, the Single Family Design Board's charge is to ensure that residences are done with high-quality material and are compatible with the existing neighborhood. The project was found exempt from CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, Section Guideline 15301 for existing facilities, which allows for the demolition of existing on-site structures, including single-family residences, and California Environmental Quality Act exemption 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures, which allows for the construction of a new residence. And staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the coastal development permit required for the project, subject to the findings and conditions of approval that were outlined in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm here for that, and the applicant team is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. And we're ready for the applicant presentation, and if you could introduce yourselves and everyone on your team. Thank you.
Is this on? Yeah, Planning Commissioners, Adam Sharkey, Blackbird Architects, Ken Radke, and Stefan Farmazin from Blackbird are also here. Thank you to Pilar for the staff report. We just wanted to quickly move through and then be available for questions, some of the basics. So maybe, Pilar, if I just say in the staff report, the sheet number to pull up, is that easier?
I can go to the staff report,
Yeah.
or
Staff
did you
report.
want the plans?
Well, it's the
Can do
drawings
either.
are at the back, so if that's either one, because all the drawings are in the
Let's
staff
see.
report. So A1.1, page
Let's-
28 of the,
Let me go to that. Hold on just a minute.
so the owners, I think some of you may have met at the site visit, Jaime and Debbie Perez. They wanted to be here. I know they're watching on TV today. Jaime is an umpire for regional baseball games and is in Atascadero umping a game right now. So yeah, 1.1, the site plan, we'll just, yeah. So we'll jump around a little bit, try to go fast to just give the basic overview and then be available. So Jaime and Debbie love the neighborhood, Shoreline Park, and the Mesa community. They really look forward to improving the property and having this be their forever home. They drink coffee out on the small front stoop that exists now and look forward to doing that with the future project. The site plan, I think what might have been seen from the site visit, the goal is to move the garage that's currently in the front yard setback out of that setback, slide it over, and then reduce the amount of paving at the front of the property for parking to open it up for landscape and a sort of improved front entry. In the back, there's a 30-foot by 13-foot pool in this private backyard, which also has then a small pool equipment area and a small pool changing area just for ease of use with the pool. The house is shown, and then the front and back terrace and patios. If we go to C 2.1, the civil.
Do you by chance happen to know
Yeah, I
what
think
sheet it
it's,
is?
Up from that.
Can go to 7. Maybe. Okay. Look at the
I think it's one up from there.
6, maybe.
There we go. So as Pilar mentioned, so it's in a very gently sloping, nearly flat site. So there's minimal grading outside of the need for the pool and the house construction. It is a Tier 3 project, and so even though there's a equivalent amount, or I think even a tiny net reduction in impervious area, it still requires a 1-inch storm event to be captured and retained on site. So up at the front in the driveway area, grab a pointer. Right here, this is where a plastic chamber that's backfilled with gravel. It's at the low part of the site, which would take all the roof drainage and runoff and be able to retain. It's about a little over 2,000 gallons that it can store without then flowing off-site. So that's what's needed now to comply with the new Tier 3 guidelines at the city. So we've designed that with Ashley and Vance, civil engineers. And let's go, the next one forward is the landscape plan. So the project has drought-tolerant native plants. They're low ornamental plantings and vines. There's no trees proposed. We wanted to be sensitive to neighbor views and to not sort of cause big shade canopies to be in the way. If we go one, so there's a plant palette that's to the right, but it's all sort of shrubs, grasses, and drought-tolerant natives. If we go to the hardscape plan, yep. So there's hardscape around the pool deck and area. There's a terrace that transitions from the deck up. The finished floor of the house is about 2 feet, like the existing house is, up from grade. So that's an open deck with gravel under it that allows it to be permeable. That eastern side around the pool equipment enclosure and changing, we're having hardscape, but we're going to try and divide that up and have gravel in between to allow some not having water runoff. And similarly, if you scroll down, Pilar, the driveway apron under which the chamber is under, we're going to break those up to be aesthetically pleasing concrete strips with also gravel lines, so water won't sheet flow off of that out to the street. 3.4, it's towards the back, just to quickly cover the fencing. Yeah, I think it's one up from there. And if you zoom out, so there's new fencing proposed. I think as we saw at the site visit, most of the side retaining walls, they're at the north and east, are existing and on the neighbor's property. So we're just building a new privacy fencing on our property that abuts it, and then would have new retaining walls. Some of the existing retaining walls to remain are a little worse for wear, so we would be having new retaining walls and backfilled in between them to make that function appropriately. The material is just a basic board form concrete with a low planter in areas, and then a Core-10 metal, which is not shiny. It patinas and goes to a kind of a rust, even though it doesn't rust through. It doesn't require staining and maintenance. If we go to 2.1, the floor plan. Yeah, just a few up from there. There we go. So it's a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Trying to have an open floor plan. That the site, as you may have seen, has great views out to Shoreline Park. So trying to have a open living, dining, kitchen area that flows from the back private yard out to then the front and taking in the views. Compact bedrooms, an efficient layout, trying to minimize hallways. All the main living is on this ground floor. It's good for design for aging and sort of a functional floor plan. If we go one sheet forward, as mentioned, there's a small landing and then an open stair area that brings natural light down into the kitchen and dining area. And that has a sink and a little storage and bar countertop to access the outdoor roof deck. So that's put over the garage. Because the garage is at grade, it's the lowest part on the site. So our occupiable element, we're putting over the lower 2 foot down from the rest of the finished floor areas of the house for this uncovered roof deck. Let's jump one ahead to the roof plan. So metal standing seam hip roofs is for the small popped-up roof. And then we have, and work through with the SFDB, these plate heights to have some varied massing and appropriate sort of scale and front image. It's sort of a friendly modern. We can look at the elevations and talk. So the roof is metal. If we go to A3.1, that's the front of the house. So at the garage, there would be some smooth troweled integral color plaster as one part of the building skin. And then in the middle volume is some stained wood siding, which would be sort of a mix of those. You can see the kind of varied massing of the slightly higher roof form for the main living spaces, and then the lower set garage, roof deck above, and then the setback second floor landing element. If we go to A4.1, yeah, so you can see the back elevation is, that's the front elevation. The back, we have some large opening doors to connect that back dining space to the terrace and down to the outdoor use area. Bedroom areas are over on the left. So if we go to 4.1, the sections, you can kind of see the vertical. Yeah, go past those. Here we go. So that's through the garage, a north-south section, so you can see the sort of small landing area, the roof deck, and then the bedrooms. There's a small sort of mechanical inset area of that roof form as well. And then if we go down to the other section, it's through the main living space where you have a couple steps up. The grade slightly goes up as you go to the back of the site, and then you have the outdoor back terrace and pool, and then you can see the kind of fencing, existing fencing beyond the property line, new fencing that essentially matches it in height. Then maybe we could go to, it's early Pilar A0.4, just because it shows all the renderings. I think it's the third sheet. One more. Yeah, there, if we zoom out. So these, Pilar showed one of them, these are just some various views to get a sense of this sort of varied scale, massing, and materials of the house. Again, the goal is to have a compact, friendly, kind of livable home. They love Shoreline Park and wanted to preserve openness. So while we have the privacy fencing in the back, we transition at the front yard area on the sides to a 3.5-foot low fence, and then no fencing at Shoreline Park along the sidewalk, so an open landscape there. Then maybe we'll jump to A3.3. I think that's nearly at the end, and that's just, you had shown one of it's the streetscape views. The goal was to really be compatible with the neighborhood. There's a nice eclectic mix of homes, varied 1- and 2-story forms, some roof decks, some good openings and glass to take in the view in the park. So we wanted to fit into that context, be sensitive with the neighbors, not have a lot of bedrooms and overlooking things on second stories into backyard and side yard areas. So in closing, Debbie and Jaime are requesting your approval so they can build the sensitive design to approve the neighborhood. We're available for questions, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shoki. And so with that, we can open up public comment on this item. And I don't believe we have any speaker slips for public comment, so we can close out public comment. And we'll bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Wiscombe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question of the applicant. You said that for the stormwater, you're doing I'm just curious about this because we live on the mesa, and when we did our construction, we have several big pits in our yard for stormwater. So you use a plastic retainer, is that right?
Yeah, we could actually, it might be helpful because there's been questions about this from our clients and at large on residential projects, and this is increasingly one of the compliance measures that you'll probably be seeing. If we go to that C1 sheet, there's a section of the chamber. So there's two basic methods of complying now with more stringent Tier 3, and the one you mentioned is one that's commonly done called a bioretention basin.
Right, where
And so-
it's just filled with
Yeah.
gravel and then, so it's.
Right,
it can
it has to be
treated and
6
permeate
inches
through.
deep, flat, and has to have slope to it. And then it has to be sized accordingly for this 1-inch storm event or a 25-year, depending which is the larger amount. So if we zoom in down here, yes. So it's about a 4-foot deep trench. You can see there's some gravel and other for it to allow paving of the driveway above it. But then it's really a plastic half dome that then is backfilled around it and in it with gravel. And that allows that whole area to store stormwater as it comes down and retain that and then allow it to percolate down into the soil over time.
So does the plastic dome allow it to percolate then? Is that?
Yes, it's open, so it's
It
just
is,
structurally
okay.
so that
Yeah.
there's no settlement over time. And this can be done then under driveways, in parking lots, in a lot of places that you
Right.
otherwise, you can also plant landscape above it. So we had done calculations, the bioretention basin would take up about 400 square feet it has really aesthetic challenges in how it presents what you can plant in it. And for
Yes.
this site, especially being by Shoreline Park, it seemed warranted to take care of the stormwater management, but allow a really elegant planting at the front yard.
That's, okay, that's great. Thank you for your answer to that, because I know the challenges of planting in, in the type of stormwater treatment areas we have on our property. And you think you can plant something and then find out, uh-oh, I've hit the rock.
Yes, and there's also those plants for bioretention basins, they have to simultaneously, there's guidelines wanting drought-tolerant planting, but then the bioretention basins need to be able to be inundated with standing water for a big storm, so it's hard for on plants.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you. And I think my other question is just a quick one for Ms. Plummer, and that is at Single Family Design Board, and you referenced this, I just wanted you to maybe clarify it. There were 2 speakers, and they seemed to be consistent with sending letters and attending the meetings. Could you just elaborate on what, they were concerned about something? Was it the fencing? Is that what they-
Certainly. There's the immediately adjacent home, I believe it's 1390 Shoreline, and they were present at both meetings and expressing comments about the height of the building, specifically at the first hearing, as well as some concerns about how the new fencing would relate to their existing wall and whether or not, the intention was to remove their wall. So that was addressed by the second hearing, where the applicant team again lowered the plate heights and also provided the detail about how the fence would be kept and the new fence would be on their property line. And the adjacent property at the rear had concerns primarily not about the building, but about vegetation, for example, trees. The last landscape plan did have 2 trees proposed. Those have been since removed. No new trees are being proposed as part of the project. That has been his primary concern, and I spoke with him earlier today, so he's well aware of the hearing and understands there's no trees being proposed that'll block his view.
That's great. Okay, thank you, and thank you for your thoroughness on that. I appreciate the answers to that. And, Mr. Chair, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. And before I forget, I neglected to ask Ms. Fennessy if we had received written correspondence on this item during public comment.
Thank you. We did receive 1 public comment letter from Paulina Khan, and that was distributed to the commission prior to this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. Other questions from the commission? Commissioner Higgins?
Yes, for Mr. Starkey. So we don't ordinarily see projects like this that don't have a mod or some sort of aspect of, I don't know, concern or controversy. Can you just take us through your design process and how you ended up with this form?
Sure, yeah. Jaime and Debbie loved the site, they loved the views. We went through some initial studies about what to do about parking, because they were wondering, should it be in the back or other? They knew they had a non-compliant, they were in what used to be, when it was built in the 50s, was a 15-foot front yard setback that now is 20. So we knew they had looked at potentially trying to save the house, but there's no way to access the backyard from inside the house. It's reached its limits in terms of usable life and quality. And the front of the property, they were surprised at how it's all devoted to driving. The garage has the best view on the entire lot. So the goal was to have an elegant single floor. They wanted a single floor generally for all their living spaces, and they wanted to connect. They really love sitting out and having coffee. They do this a lot to overlook the coast out at their front, and so they wanted a nicer front yard to be welcome to the community, see people, wave hi. But then they also wanted to be able to get and use their backyard, because right now it's a circuitous route. So the goal was, in development of the plan, they lived in Hawaii and love indoor-outdoor relationships, and just a natural consolidated open feel for a modern, so living, dining, kitchen, all as one open space.
And there was a note in the design review board minutes about they didn't like your transparent or translucent garage door.
Yes.
Was that part of your design intent, is just better connectivity to the sidewalk from inside the building, or?
It's a friendly modern style in terms of the palette. So the original proposal at SFDB had translucent glass for the full garage door, so it would be a metal frame, but the commission requested, or the SFDB requested that only the top light of the garage be kept as translucent. There wouldn't be any direct views into the garage. It would have always been translucent, but yeah, the goal is sort of light, air, openness. They spend, to have the garage not be a dark place, the easiest way is to have the garage door itself let some light in.
And so my real question is, how come you didn't go up with a second level?
Yeah, I think they wanted this to be their forever home. They liked the idea of all their bedrooms and use areas being on the same level, so they weren't always having to go up and down stairs. The lot sort of worked and fit without needing any modifications. They know that the view improves as you go up, and so this idea of a roof deck, the backyard is great for privacy, but for the view, that front over the garage, they thought would be a great reason to go up, and then trying to keep it a partial two-story. The Mesa, there's neighbors, these lots are close at hand. They wanted a non-controversial project.
Last question is, has Creeks already approved your stormwater plan?
I think we'd get technical approval later. I know we had to submit both the full hydrology report.
You haven't done that yet?
We've done that.
Oh.
So that's
Yeah.
part of our completeness determination that we've done, and so there were.
At this stage, the Creek Division has reviewed the stormwater. They did have some additional corrections which need to be addressed before final approval on the project, so that's still in the works. There's a couple items that they needed to address.
Creeks final approval, not design review final, or?
Design review
Same.
final.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Other questions from the commission? Any questions from Vice Chair Bonderson?
Thank you so much. I actually don't have any additional questions. I thought this was a very thorough staff report, and the presentation was quite clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So with that, Commissioner Wiscombe?
I
Oh.
gather you want a motion?
Yeah, we can move on to discussion and a motion.
Okay. I really like the project. I think the Mesa is very eclectic, and that's part of the reason it gives it its charm. And I think you've done a great job of just fitting in really well to the character of the Mesa. And I also appreciate the fact that you brought a project forward that does not have modifications, and your site is tricky from a standpoint of where it's located. And you've done a great job at that. And I would be happy to move the findings. They're on page 9 of our staff report, 1 and 2. And also to move approval of the draft Planning Commission conditions of approval that start on page 11. And I think you've just done a marvelous job. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to second this motion. I feel very confident with the motion that was just made by Commissioner Wiscombe. I feel like we can follow along with the conditions and the findings that were provided in the staff report.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Commissioner Wiscombe, a second from Vice Chair Bonderson. Discussion on this item? Go ahead, Commissioner Higgins.
So it seems, I know you were looking forward to coming to the Planning Commission on a project like this, and while I enjoyed these, I just was curious about the exclusion, and I understand the footprint of the property in relation to the appeals jurisdiction, but it seems like on projects like this where there's no mods, they ought to not necessarily have to take a trip to the planning commission. That's a zoning amendment, I take it?
Commissioner Higgins, that would be more than a zoning amendment because the Coastal Commission establishes what is exempt from review and what isn't. Due to the proximity to the bluffs and the beach, this is not exempt, and even if we proposed an amendment, they would not support such an amendment.
Well, then, let's get them out of here.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Other comments on the motion? I'm not seeing any. Ms. Fennessy, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. We'll go ahead and start the roll call vote. Commissioner Higgins,
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Wardlow,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe,
Yes?
Commissioner Bach,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bonderson,
Yes.
and Chair Escobedo.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you. And thank you to the applicant team. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all for your service and time.
Absolutely. And thank you, Ms. Plummer. And so with that, we will close out this item, and we will move on to the administrative agenda. And we will start with committee and liaison reports and the staff hearing officer liaison report. Commissioner Higgins?
Hearing yesterday was in person. I got a email that the Zoom meeting was canceled, and I assumed the whole thing was canceled, but it's just Zoom. So everything's in person. And it consisted of front yard mods and ADUs in the coastal zone.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Other committee and liaison reports? Commissioner Lodge?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On March 30th, at the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting, another major city project got final design approval. It's a project that those of us that have been on the commission for a while saw on December 7th, 2020. We approved it to proceed to the Coastal Commission, and it was approved by the Coastal Commission on August 15th of 2021. And this is a project to try to improve the conditions at the bird refuge so that we no longer have these periods of very unpleasant odors issuing from the stagnant water. They're redoing the weir and change, well, let's see, it's to improve water quality and restore habitat for aquatic and avian wildlife with the replacement of the Andre Clark Bird Refuge Lagoon Weir and Weir Gate, removal of approximately 18 non-native trees, recontouring portions of the lagoon shoreline, recontouring the mouth of the lagoon on the beach side adjacent to the volleyball courts, seasonal lowering of the sand berm at the mouth of the lagoon on the beach side, and installation of native plants and rock clusters along the margin of the lake, islands, and mouth of the lagoon. Construction of a bioretention basin will also occur at the Municipal Tennis Center property. And we're talking about bioretention versus what this last project is doing. And this will be in sort of a low area that parallels Coast Village Road, between Coast Village Road and the tennis courts. You probably have read about this project. There's quite a bit of coverage in the news on it. And the idea is to improve matters so that the lagoon will flush. And the bioretention basin is to capture the runoff from like the tennis, from the golf course and from the houses, fertilizers and other things that encourage the growth of algae and other unwanted biota in the bird refuge. So I certainly hope it is successful. It will take rain to have it function, which we seem to be getting very little of these days, but it's a good project.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. Commissioner Wiscombe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to remind my fellow commissioners and anyone from the public that may be listening that on Friday, April 22nd, we are going to have the second De La Guerra Plaza Committee Historic Landmarks Commission joint meeting. And it's going to be, that's Friday, the 22nd of April. It's going to be from 8:30 to 11, and it's going to be held at the Faulkner Gallery. So I'll announce it again at our next meeting, but you might want to put that on your calendars if you're interested. We, the committee did form a pavement subcommittee because pavement is one of the big issues at De La Guerra Plaza and how to deal with that. And the pavement subcommittee has met twice on site. It consists of B.B. Longstreet from Parks and Recreation Commission, both historic landmarks commissioners, Michael Drury and Steve House, and me. So, and we made some great progress on that, so that'll be reported at this joint meeting. It will ultimately be up to HLC to decide what they want to use for paving, but we're trying to, hopefully have some options that are reasonable. So, and that's all I have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. I have a question. Do you know if the meeting will be televised, or is it in person only?
They have been televised because we've had them on Zoom, and I don't know the answer to that. They do televise meetings at the Faulkner Gallery, don't they? We had workshops there for AUD, and I remember that. I can't remember if they were televised or not. Do you know, Mr. Buss?
Commissioner Wiscombe, I do not know if this will be televised.
Yeah.
But I can find out.
Yeah, and I can actually ask Brad Hess, the project manager, and report at the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
Vice Chair Bonderson?
Thank you. It's interesting to have to raise our hand in this format, but I'm glad you saw me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple quite short announcements today. The first one is that we are caught up on ABR, Architecture Board of Review. They have met 3 times since our last Planning Commission hearing, March 21st, 28th, and April 4th, but there's nothing to report, so we're all caught up. I also want to let everyone know, if you are interested, if the public is interested, that we have a State Street Advisory Committee meeting coming up on Monday, the 18th of April, and it will be in person. It's being held in the David Gephardt Public Meeting Room, which is over in Garden Street. And I'm not sure how they are planning on coordinating it, if it's going to be televised in live time, or if they're going to record it and then post it on the website. We're waiting to find out, but they're actively working on it at this time. And then I also want to let everyone know that the Transportation and Circulation Committee is also scheduled to meet in the Gephardt Room coming up at the end of this month. Their next meeting is on Thursday, April 28th. That meeting will be at 5:30 p.m. I failed to mention that the State Street Advisory Committee on Monday, April 18th meets from 4 to 6 p.m. So if anyone's interested in either of those, they will be in person this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bonderson. Other committee and liaison reports? I'm not seeing any. So with that, we're breaking records this year. 1:48, we can call this meeting over. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekends. Be safe. And we'll see you in 2 weeks on the 21st. Is that right? So April 21st will be our next hearing. Take care.